The rain lashed against the Bucharest warehouse, mirroring the storm brewing inside Anya. Tonight's target, Viktor Volkov, a man whose empire was built on human misery. The syndicate, Anya's employer, had deemed him a liability. Anya, their most efficient solution. She moved with the grace of a predator, each step deliberate, each breath controlled. The warehouse, usually bustling with illicit activity, was eerily silent, save for the rhythmic dripping of water and the distant rumble of thunder. Anya bypassed the laser grids with practiced ease, her movements a blur in the dim light. She disabled the pressure sensors under the floorboards, a ghost in the machine. Years of training had honed her into a weapon, a perfect instrument of death. Tonight, that weapon was primed. She reached the main office, the door reinforced steel, but no match for her skill set. A small charge, precisely placed, and the door swung inward, revealing Volkov seated at a mahogany desk, surrounded by heavily armed guards. Volkov didn't flinch. He simply raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his cold eyes. "Anya," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I was expecting you." The guards moved, a wall of muscle and steel. Anya reacted instantly, her hand blurring as she drew her silenced pistol. 2 shots, 2 guards down, silent and precise. Chaos erupted. The remaining guards opened fire, bullets ripping through the air. Anya moved like a dancer, weaving between the streams of lead, her reflexes honed to an almost supernatural level. She used the environment to her advantage, flipping tables using overturned crates as cover. Each shot was a calculated kill, a testament to her deadly accuracy. But something felt off. The guards were too slow, too predictable. It was as if they were intentionally drawing out the fight. As she eliminated the last guard, a chilling realization dawned. Volkov was still sitting calmly at his desk, a smug grin on his face. This wasn't a hit. It was a setup. Before she could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, a familiar face from the syndicate, a man she had trusted. He raised his weapon, a specialized rifle designed to penetrate body armor. "Sorry, Anya," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Orders are orders." The world exploded in pain. The rounds tore through her, sending her sprawling to the floor. She was dimly aware of Volkov rising from his desk, his eyes filled with a chilling satisfaction. This was the end, or so they thought. Even riddled with bullets, Anya refused to surrender. Adrenaline surged through her veins, fueling her will to survive. She spotted a flashbang on a fallen guard's belt, grabbed it, and pulled the pin. The warehouse was instantly engulfed in blinding light and deafening sound. In the confusion, Anya dragged herself towards a shattered window, her body screaming in protest. She tumbled out into the rain-soaked alleyway, leaving behind a scene of chaos and betrayal. Her hunt for Volkov had turned into a desperate race for survival. The hunter had become the hunted. The cold rain was a brutal awakening. Anya lay in the alley, the grimy pavement a stark contrast to the opulent office she had just escaped. Each breath was a ragged gasp, each movement a symphony of pain. The bullets had done their work. She needed to move, to disappear before the syndicate's cleanup crew arrived. They wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Her training kicked in, overriding the agony. She assessed her injuries. 2 rounds in the abdomen, 1 in the shoulder. Not immediately fatal, but debilitating. She needed to find a safe place, somewhere she could tend to her wounds and plan her next move. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. The syndicate, the organization that had molded her into a weapon, had now discarded her like a broken tool. Years of loyalty, countless missions completed without question, all meant nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than the bullets. She had believed in the syndicate's mission, their twisted sense of justice. She had convinced herself that their actions, however brutal, served a greater good. Now, she realized it was all a lie, a carefully constructed facade to justify their own greed and power. Anya pushed herself to her feet, using the wall for support. She stumbled through the alley, her movements slow and unsteady. The city lights blurred through her pain-filled eyes. She needed to find somewhere off the grid, a place where the syndicate's eyes couldn't reach. She remembered a contact, an old informant named Silas, who operated in the city's underbelly. He was a shady character, but he knew the city like the back of his hand. He was her only hope. Reaching Silas wouldn't be easy. The syndicate's network was vast, their reach extending into every corner of Bucharest. They would be watching the hospitals, the train stations, the airports. Anya needed to be invisible, a ghost in the machine once more. She ditched her weapons, knowing they would only attract attention. She stripped off her blood-soaked tactical gear, replacing it with a nondescript jacket she found in a nearby dumpster. She needed to blend in, to become one with the city's shadows. As she limped through the streets, Anya couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to conceal a potential enemy, every passing car a threat. She knew the syndicate wouldn't rest until she was dead. She was a loose end, a liability. But they underestimated her. They had trained her too well. They had created a monster, and now that monster was coming for them. The pain, the betrayal, the burning desire for revenge, it all fueled her determination. She would survive. She would find Silas. And she would make the syndicate pay. The hunter was wounded, but she was far from defeated. The game had just begun. The neon glow of Bucharest's red light district offered a semblance of anonymity, a chaotic symphony of vice and desperation that masked Anya's pain. Each step was agony, a constant reminder of the syndicate's betrayal. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with humidity, clinging to her skin like a shroud. She navigated the crowded streets, her senses on high alert, scanning for any sign of pursuit. Silas's hideout was located deep within the district, a dilapidated building hidden behind a maze of narrow alleyways. It was a place where the desperate sought refuge, where secrets were traded for favors, and where trust was a rare commodity. Anya had used Silas's services before, extracting information that had proved invaluable on previous missions. He was a survivor, a master of the shadows, and her only hope of disappearing. She reached the building, a crumbling facade that seemed to breathe with the city's grime. A single flickering bulb illuminated the entrance, casting long, distorted shadows. She knocked on the heavy wooden door, a prearranged signal known only to Silas and his trusted associates. A small peephole opened, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Password," a gruff voice demanded. "The Raven knows," Anya replied, her voice barely a whisper. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway filled with the pungent aroma of cheap cigarettes and stale beer. A hulking figure stood guard, his eyes scrutinizing Anya with suspicion. He nodded curtly and gestured for her to enter. Silas was waiting in a back room, a small, wiry man with a face etched with years of hard living. He sat behind a cluttered desk, surrounded by stacks of newspapers, old radios, and various electronic gadgets. He looked up as Anya entered, his eyes widening in surprise. "Anya," he said, his voice raspy, "what brings you to my humble abode? And what happened to you?" Anya didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I need your help, Silas. The syndicate has turned on me." Silas's eyes narrowed. "The syndicate? That's a dangerous game you're playing, Anya." "I know," she said, her voice firm. "They framed me for a crime I didn't commit. They want me dead." Silas leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "And what do you want me to do?" "I need a place to hide, somewhere they won't find me. I need information. I need to know why they betrayed me." Silas hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Helping Anya would be risky, attracting the attention of the syndicate. But he also knew that Anya was a valuable asset, a force to be reckoned with. And he had a soft spot for those who had been wronged. "All right, Anya," he said finally. "I'll help you. But this is going to cost you." Anya nodded. "Name your price." Silas smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. "I think we can come to an arrangement." The alliance was forged, a pact between two survivors in a city of shadows. Anya had found a temporary refuge, but the road to revenge was long and perilous. Silas's hideout was less a sanctuary and more a temporary reprieve. The room he offered Anya was small and sparsely furnished, but it was clean and offered a modicum of privacy. More importantly, it was hidden, tucked away in the labyrinthine depths of the building. Silas, true to his word, had provided her with basic medical supplies: bandages, antiseptic, and a bottle of cheap painkillers. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stabilize her wounds and stave off infection. As Anya tended to her injuries, Silas worked tirelessly, tapping into his network of contacts, gathering information about the syndicate's motives and their search for her. The news wasn't good. The syndicate had placed a substantial bounty on her head, branding her a traitor and a rogue agent. They were actively hunting her, deploying their most ruthless assassins to track her down. "They're saying you stole something," Silas said, his voice grave. "Something very valuable." "Stole what?" Anya asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I didn't take anything." "That's what I told them," Silas said. "But they're not buying it. They think you have something that belongs to them, something they can't afford to lose." The mystery deepened. What could the syndicate possibly want that was worth betraying their top assassin? Anya racked her brain, trying to recall anything from her recent missions that might be of significance. But nothing came to mind. Time was running out. The syndicate's net was closing in. Silas informed Anya that they had already raided several of his other safe houses, interrogating his associates and leaving a trail of violence in their wake. It was only a matter of time before they discovered her location. "We need to move you," Silas said urgently. "They're getting too close." Anya knew he was right. Staying put would be suicide. But where could she go? Every corner of Bucharest was potentially compromised. She needed to find a way to escape the city, to disappear completely. Then she remembered Decker, an old acquaintance, a former operative with a checkered past, living in self-imposed exile in a remote village in the Carpathian Mountains. He was a ghost, a legend whispered among the intelligence community. He was also one of the few people she trusted, a man who had once saved her life. Reaching Decker would be a long shot, a dangerous gamble. But he was her only hope. She relayed the plan to Silas, who agreed to help her secure transportation out of the city. As they prepared to leave, Anya knew that she was walking into the unknown. The syndicate was powerful, ruthless, and relentless. But she was determined to survive, to uncover the truth behind their betrayal, and to exact her revenge. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was ready to face it head-on. She was Anya, the syndicate's top killer, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. The Carpathian Mountains stood as a jagged, imposing barrier against the sky, their peaks shrouded in mist and ancient secrets. Decker's cabin, a sturdy structure built from rough-hewn logs, nestled deep within a secluded valley, a testament to his desire for isolation. Years had passed since he walked away from the life, the violence, the endless moral compromises. He had sought solace in simplicity, in the rhythm of nature, hoping to bury the ghosts of his past. He chopped wood with a practiced ease, the rhythmic thud of the axe a meditative exercise. The crisp mountain air filled his lungs, cleansing the residue of his former life. He found a quiet satisfaction in the physical labor, in the tangible results of his efforts. His days were spent tending to his small vegetable garden, fishing in the nearby stream, and reading by the crackling fire in the evenings. But the world had a way of intruding, of reminding him that he could never truly escape. The insistent ringing of the satellite phone shattered the tranquility, a jarring intrusion into his carefully constructed peace. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the receiver. He knew that any call could only bring trouble. He picked up the phone, his voice gruff. "Decker." "It's Anya," the voice on the other end said, barely a whisper. "I need your help." Decker's blood ran cold. He hadn't heard from Anya in years. He had assumed she was dead, or worse, still embroiled in the same dark world he had left behind.
Anya.
"What's going on?" "I've been betrayed," she said, her voice strained. "The syndicate wants me dead." I have nowhere else to turn. Decker's mind raced. He knew Anya was a survivor, a formidable operative. If she was seeking his help, it meant she was in serious trouble. He had sworn off violence, but he couldn't abandon her. He owed her too much. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice hardening. Anya gave him her coordinates, a remote location on the outskirts of the village. "I'm wounded," she said. "I don't know how much longer I can last." Decker hung up the phone, his face grim. The quiet life was over. He grabbed his old tactical gear, the familiar weight of the weapons a chilling reminder of his past. He knew that helping Anya would mean confronting his demons, risking his life, and potentially unleashing a storm of violence upon his peaceful sanctuary. But he couldn't turn his back on her. He owed her a debt, and he always paid his debts. The disillusioned ex-operative was about to be dragged back into the game, whether he liked it or not. The past had come calling, and Decker was ready to answer. The abandoned logging road was barely passable, a rutted track carved into the mountainside. Decker navigated the treacherous terrain in his battered Land Rover, his face etched with a mixture of concern and apprehension. He hadn't seen Anya in years, and he had no idea what to expect. He knew she was capable, resourceful, but he also knew the syndicate was relentless. He found her huddled in the ruins of an old watchtower, barely conscious, her face pale and gaunt. The wounds were worse than he had imagined. She had lost a lot of blood. "Decker," she whispered, her voice weak. "You came." He knelt beside her, his eyes filled with a grim determination. "I always come." He quickly assessed her injuries, his movements efficient and practiced. He had seen worse, but not much. He helped her into the Land Rover, carefully maneuvering her into a more comfortable position. As he drove back to his cabin, Anya recounted the events that had led to her current predicament. The mission gone wrong, the betrayal, the relentless pursuit. Decker listened in silence, his jaw clenched tight. He knew the syndicate. He knew their ruthlessness, their capacity for deception. He had walked away from that world, but it seemed that world wasn't quite finished with him. Back at the cabin, Decker tended to Anya's wounds with a practiced hand. He cleaned the infected areas, stitched the gashes, and administered antibiotics. He worked in silence, his focus absolute. Anya watched him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "You could have just turned me away." Decker paused, his gaze meeting hers. "You saved my life once, Anya. I don't forget those things." He didn't elaborate, but Anya knew there was more to it than that. There was a shared history, a bond forged in the crucible of violence and betrayal. As Anya recovered, a tense but developing partnership began to form. Decker was reluctant to get involved, to risk his peaceful existence. But he couldn't deny the moral imperative to help Anya. And he couldn't deny a flicker of recognition in her story, a sense that he too had been betrayed by those he had trusted. He knew that helping Anya would mean confronting his own demons, facing the darkness he had tried so hard to escape. But he also knew that he couldn't stand idly by while she was hunted and persecuted. He was Decker, and he was a man of action. The past had come calling, and he was ready to answer, even if it meant walking back into the fire. As Anya's strength returned, fueled by Decker's care and her own burning desire for revenge, they began piecing together the puzzle of the syndicate's betrayal. Silas, despite the risks, continued to feed them information from Bucharest, providing crucial leads and intel on the syndicate's activities. "They're not just after you, Anya," Silas said over the secure line, his voice crackling with static. "They're cleaning house. Anyone who might have known about the project." "The project?" Anya asked, her brow furrowed. "What project?" "I don't know the specifics," Silas admitted. "But it's big. It involves high-ranking officials, politicians, even some military brass. And it seems like you stumbled upon something you weren't supposed to see." Decker, listening intently, recognized the signs of a deep-rooted conspiracy. He had seen it before, the insidious creep of corruption that could infect even the most powerful organizations. "What about this valuable thing they think Anya stole?" he asked. "That's the key," Silas replied. "They believe Anya has a prototype, a weapon of some kind. Something they've been developing in secret." Anya thought back to her last few missions, searching for any clue that might shed light on this mysterious weapon. Then she remembered the Volkov hit, the Syndicate's unusual interest in Volkov's research, the strange security protocols surrounding his laboratory. "Volkov," she said, her voice sharp. "It has something to do with Volkov's research." Decker nodded. Volkov was working on something for the Syndicate, something they didn't want anyone else to know about. Anya must have seen something, or inadvertently taken something, that gave her away. They delved deeper, sifting through the information Silas provided, connecting the dots, uncovering a web of deceit and corruption that reached the highest levels of power. They discovered that the Syndicate was developing a new type of weapon, a highly advanced form of biological warfare that could be deployed silently and effectively, leaving no trace. The weapon was codenamed Chimera, and it was designed to target specific genetic markers, making it capable of eliminating entire populations based on their ethnicity or origin. It was a weapon of mass destruction, a tool of genocide, and the Syndicate intended to use it to further their own twisted agenda. Anya realized the full extent of the Syndicate's depravity. They weren't just assassins, they were architects of destruction, willing to sacrifice innocent lives to achieve their goals. The betrayal was no longer just a personal matter, it was a global threat. "We have to stop them," Anya said, her voice filled with resolve. "We can't let them unleash this weapon." Decker nodded, his eyes hardening. "Then we have a war to win." The reluctant partnership had evolved into a shared mission, a fight against a powerful and insidious enemy. The stakes were higher than ever, and the odds were stacked against them. But Anya and Decker were determined to expose the conspiracy and prevent the Syndicate from unleashing their deadly weapon. The hunt had begun. The tranquility of Decker's mountain retreat was about to be shattered. Silas's warning crackled over the comms. "They know where you are. ETA 5 minutes. Get ready." Decker and Anya moved swiftly, transforming the cabin into a fortress. They reinforced the windows, barricaded the doors, and laid out their weapons. The Syndicate wasn't going to take them by surprise. The first wave arrived in 2 black SUVs, screeching to a halt outside the cabin. Heavily armed assassins, clad in black tactical gear, emerged, their faces hidden behind masks. They moved with a coordinated precision, a testament to their training. Decker took up a position by the front window, his sniper rifle trained on the approaching vehicles. Anya positioned herself by the back door, a silenced pistol in her hand, her movements fluid and deadly. The assassins opened fire, bullets ripping through the cabin walls. Decker returned fire, his shots precise and lethal. 2 assassins fell instantly, their bodies crumpling to the ground. Anya moved out the back door, flanking the attackers. She moved like a ghost, silent and deadly, taking down the remaining assassins with a series of swift and brutal strikes. The fight was fast and furious, a brutal ballet of violence. Decker's fighting style was raw and visceral, relying on brute strength and tactical experience. Anya's style was more refined, a blend of martial arts and lethal precision. Inside the cabin, Decker engaged in a close-quarters firefight, trading shots with the remaining assassins. He moved with a surprising agility, using the furniture as cover, his movements fluid and deadly. Anya, outside, continued to eliminate the remaining attackers, her movements a blur of motion. She used her environment to her advantage, using trees and rocks as cover, her shots precise and deadly. As the last assassin fell, a tense silence descended upon the mountain. Decker and Anya surveyed the scene, their faces grim. They had survived the first wave, but they knew it was only the beginning. The fight had highlighted their contrasting fighting styles, their strengths and weaknesses. Decker was a seasoned veteran, a master of improvisation and tactical warfare. Anya was a trained assassin, a master of stealth and precision. But it had also strengthened their bond. They had fought side by side, relying on each other's skills and instincts. They had proven to each other that they could trust each other, that they could rely on each other in the face of danger. "They're not going to stop," Anya said, her voice tight. "They're going to keep coming." Decker nodded. "Then we'll be ready for them." He reloaded his weapon, his eyes hardening. "This is our home now, and we're going to defend it." The battle had just begun, but Anya and Decker were ready to face whatever the syndicate threw their way. They were a team, a force to be reckoned with, and they weren't going down without a fight. The aftermath of the attack served as a grim reminder. They couldn't fight the syndicate alone. To expose the Chimera Project and stop its deployment, they needed allies, individuals with the skills and resources to take on such a powerful and secretive organization. Decker knew a few people from his past, former colleagues who had also grown disillusioned with the agency's methods. One was Isabel, a brilliant hacker with a penchant for bending the rules. Another was Mikhail, a former Special Forces operative with extensive knowledge of black market arms and logistics, but trusting them was a gamble. In their world, loyalty was a fluid concept, easily swayed by money or fear. Anya also had contacts, former syndicate operatives who might be willing to help. One was Zara, a skilled interrogator with a conscience. Another was Dmitri, a former weapons expert who had grown weary of the violence. But Anya knew that approaching them would be risky. The syndicate's reach was long, and anyone associated with her would be in immediate danger. Decker and Anya decided to split up, each pursuing their own leads. Decker headed to Prague to find Isabel, while Anya traveled to Vienna to contact Zara. The journey was fraught with danger, knowing that the syndicate's eyes were everywhere. Decker found Isabel in a dimly lit internet cafe, surrounded by a tangle of wires and computer screens. She was initially wary, but Decker's plea and the urgency of the situation convinced her to help. Isabel agreed to use her hacking skills to infiltrate the syndicate's network and uncover more information about the Chimera Project. Anya's encounter with Zara was more complicated. Zara was living a quiet life, trying to escape her past. She was reluctant to get involved, fearing for her safety and the safety of her family. But Anya's impassioned plea and the horrifying details of the Chimera Project stirred something within her. Zara agreed to provide Anya with information about the syndicate's inner workings and their security protocols. As Decker and Anya gathered their allies, they knew they were playing a dangerous game. They were relying on people with their own agendas, people who could easily betray them. But they had no other choice. To defeat the syndicate, they needed all the help they could get, even if it meant trusting people they barely knew. The battle was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. They were building a team, a ragtag group of misfits and outcasts, united by a common cause, to stop the syndicate and prevent the unleashing of a deadly weapon. With Isabel and Zara on board, Anya and Decker regrouped at a safe house in the Austrian Alps, a remote chalet overlooking a snow-covered valley. The success of their recruitment efforts, coupled with the constant threat of discovery, had begun to forge a deeper connection between them. They were no longer just partners in a mission. They were becoming something more. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, trapping them inside the chalet, Anya and Decker found themselves sharing stories, snippets of their past that they had long kept hidden. Anya spoke of her childhood, her parents murdered by a rival gang, her subsequent recruitment into the syndicate, her transformation into a cold-blooded killer. She had never known love or compassion, only violence and betrayal. Decker, in turn, shared his own story. He spoke of his time in the Special Forces, the horrors he had witnessed, the lives he had taken. He spoke of his disillusionment with the agency, his decision to walk away, his desperate attempt to find peace in the mountains. He had been haunted by his past, unable to forgive himself for the things he had done. As they shared their stories, they began to understand each other on a deeper level. They recognized the pain and trauma that each of them carried, the scars that had shaped them into the people they were today. They saw beyond the surface, beyond the hardened exteriors, and found a shared humanity. One night, while reviewing the data Isabel had extracted from the syndicate servers, they encountered a particularly disturbing file, a video recording of a brutal interrogation. The victim was a young woman, a scientist who had refused to participate in the Chimera project. The interrogators were Anya's former colleagues, men she had once trusted. Anya watched the video, her face pale and drawn. The violence was sickening, the callous disregard for human life appalling. She realized the full extent of the syndicate's depravity, the depths to which they were willing to sink. Decker watched Anya, his eyes filled with concern. He saw the pain and anger in her face, the guilt and remorse. He knew that she was struggling to reconcile her past with her present, to come to terms with the things she had done. He reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "You're not that person anymore, Anya," he said softly. "You're fighting against them now. You're trying to make amends." Anya looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. She squeezed his hand tightly, grateful for his support. In that moment, she knew that she could trust him, that he would be there for her, no matter what. The shared experiences, the close calls, the revelations of their past traumas had forged a bond between them, a bond of trust and understanding. They were no longer just partners in a mission. They were allies, friends, perhaps even something more. The fight against the syndicate had brought them together, and it was that bond that would sustain them through the trials ahead. Isabel's breakthrough came at a price. While she managed to pinpoint the location of the Chimera Project's main research facility, a hidden underground complex beneath a seemingly innocuous pharmaceutical plant outside Berlin, the syndicate detected her intrusion. The safe house was compromised. "They're coming," Isabel shouted, her voice frantic over the comms. "Get out now." Anya and Decker didn't hesitate. They grabbed their gear and raced to the Land Rover, the roar of approaching vehicles echoing in the distance. As they sped away from the chalet, a hail of gunfire erupted, bullets ricocheting off the vehicle. Anya took the wheel, her driving skills honed by years of experience evading pursuers in high-stakes situations. She navigated the winding mountain roads with a reckless abandon, the Land Rover fishtailing wildly as she pushed it to its limits. Decker, in the passenger seat, returned fire, his tactical prowess evident as he picked off the pursuing vehicles one by one. He used the terrain to his advantage, setting up ambushes, creating diversions, and exploiting the syndicate's weaknesses. The chase was a high-octane ballet of speed and violence, a desperate race against time. Anya weaved through hairpin turns, her reflexes lightning fast, her eyes focused on the road ahead. Decker provided cover, his shots precise and deadly, keeping the pursuers at bay. The syndicate's resources were on full display. They had deployed a fleet of high-performance vehicles, equipped with the latest technology and driven by skilled operatives. They were relentless in their pursuit, determined to capture Anya and Decker at all costs. As the chase intensified, Anya realized that they couldn't outrun the syndicate indefinitely. They needed to find a way to lose them, to disappear completely. She spotted an abandoned ski resort in the distance, a maze of deserted buildings and treacherous slopes. It was a risky gamble, but it was their only chance. She veered off the main road, heading towards the ski resort, the Land Rover bouncing violently over the rough terrain. The syndicate vehicles followed close behind, their drivers determined to close the gap. Anya navigated the deserted ski resort with a masterful skill, using the abandoned buildings and treacherous slopes to her advantage. She led the pursuers on a wild goose chase, weaving through the deserted streets, jumping over snowdrifts, and dodging obstacles. Decker continued to provide cover, his shots precise and deadly, disabling the pursuing vehicles one by one. He used the environment to his advantage, setting up traps, creating diversions, and exploiting the syndicate's weaknesses. As the chase reached its climax, Anya spotted a ski jump, a massive ramp that loomed over the valley. It was a suicide move, but it was their only chance. She floored the accelerator, sending the Land Rover hurtling towards the ramp. Decker braced himself, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The Land Rover soared through the air, a moment of weightlessness before crashing down on the other side, the impact jarring their bones. The syndicate vehicles, unable to follow, screeched to a halt at the edge of the ramp, their drivers defeated. Anya and Decker had escaped, but they knew that the syndicate would be back. The stakes had been raised, and the hunt was far from over. The escape from the ski resort bought them time, but it came at a cost. They were now fugitives, their faces plastered across every news outlet, their every move tracked by the syndicate's vast network. They needed to disappear, to find a safe haven where they could regroup and plan their next move. They turned to Silas, their trusted informant in Bucharest. He arranged for them to be smuggled across the border into Germany, providing them with fake identities and a safe house in Berlin. But Silas's information came with a chilling revelation. Someone in their inner circle had betrayed them. "I don't know who it is," Silas said, his voice grave over the encrypted line. "But someone leaked your location to the syndicate. They knew you were coming to Berlin." Anya and Decker were stunned. They had trusted Silas implicitly, relying on his network and his expertise. But now they had to question everything. Was Silas working for the syndicate all along? Or was there another traitor in their midst? Suspicion immediately fell on Isabel and Zara. They were the newest members of the team, the ones they knew the least. But both women had proven their loyalty, risking their lives to help them. Could one of them have been compromised? As they debated the possibilities, a sense of unease settled over them. They realized that they were no longer just fighting the syndicate. They were fighting against their own doubts and insecurities. The betrayal forced them to reevaluate their strategy. They could no longer trust anyone, not even those closest to them. They had to operate in complete secrecy, relying only on each other. "We need to cut off all communication," Decker said, his voice hardening. "No more phone calls, no more emails. We're on our own." Anya nodded in agreement. "We have to assume that everyone is watching us, that everyone is listening." The betrayal strengthened their resolve. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to expose the traitor, to bring them to justice. The stakes had been raised, and the hunt had become personal. They decided to change their approach. Instead of focusing on gathering information, they would go on the offensive, targeting the syndicate's key operatives and disrupting their operations. They would hit them where it hurt, forcing them to make mistakes, exposing their vulnerabilities. The betrayal had shaken them, but it had also made them stronger. They were now more determined than ever to stop the Chimera project and bring down the syndicate. They would not be deterred, they would not be intimidated, and they would not be betrayed again. The hunt had taken a new turn, and the consequences would be devastating. Anya and Decker, operating in the shadows, systematically dismantled the syndicate's network, targeting their key financial assets, disrupting their supply lines, and eliminating their most ruthless operatives. They became a ghost, a legend whispered among the criminal underworld, a force to be reckoned with. Their actions drew the attention of the syndicate's leader, a shadowy figure known only as the Director. He was the mastermind behind the Chimera project, the architect of their global conspiracy. He had remained hidden for years, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. But now, he was forced to emerge from the shadows. Anya and Decker used their network of contacts to track the Director to a secluded villa in the Swiss Alps, a luxurious retreat surrounded by armed guards and state-of-the-art security systems. They knew that confronting him would be a suicide mission, but they had no other choice. He was the key to stopping the Chimera project, to exposing the conspiracy, to bringing the syndicate to justice. They infiltrated the villa under the cover of darkness, using their skills and training to bypass the security systems and eliminate the guards. They moved like ghosts, silent and deadly, their movements precise and coordinated. They found the Director in his study, a lavish room filled with expensive artwork and rare artifacts. He was seated behind a large mahogany desk, his face calm and composed, his eyes cold and calculating. "Anya," he said, his voice smooth and cultured, "I've been expecting you." Decker stepped forward, his weapon trained on the Director. "It's over, Director. The game is up." The Director smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. "You think you can stop me? You think you can stop the Chimera project? You have no idea what you're up against." Anya stepped forward, her voice filled with rage. "You betrayed me. You used me. You turned me into a monster." The Director chuckled. "I gave you purpose, Anya. I gave you power. You should be thanking me. You're a monster, Anya spat, her hand tightening on her weapon. You're willing to sacrifice innocent lives to achieve your goals. The director shrugged. Collateral damage. It's a necessary evil. Decker stepped forward, his voice hardening. The Chimera project ends here. You're going to tell us everything. The director shook his head. I will never betray my organization. I will never betray my beliefs. A tense standoff ensued. Anya and Decker faced the director, their weapons trained on him, their faces filled with determination. The director remained calm and composed, his eyes filled with defiance. The fate of the world hung in the balance. The standoff was shattered by the arrival of reinforcements. The director's personal guard, a squad of highly trained mercenaries, stormed into the study, weapons blazing. Anya and Decker were forced to take cover, the room erupting in a chaotic firefight. The villa became a battleground, a war zone where Anya and Decker fought side by side against overwhelming odds. They used their skills and training to their advantage, moving like ghosts, eliminating the mercenaries one by one. Decker, with his tactical prowess, directed the battle, using the environment to his advantage, setting up ambushes, creating diversions, and exploiting the mercenaries' weaknesses. Anya, with her lethal precision, moved through the villa like a whirlwind, taking down the mercenaries with a series of swift and brutal strikes. As the battle raged, Anya came face to face with the person who had betrayed her, Zara. She was standing behind the director, a weapon trained on Anya, her face filled with regret. I'm sorry, Anya, Zara said, her voice trembling. I had no choice. They threatened my family. Anya's heart sank. She had trusted Zara. She had believed in her. But now, she realized that she had been wrong. Zara had been working for the syndicate all along, feeding them information, betraying their trust. Why Zara? Anya asked, her voice filled with pain. Why did you do it? I had to protect my family, Zara replied, her voice breaking. They would have killed them if I hadn't helped them. Anya understood Zara's motivations, but she couldn't forgive her betrayal. She had risked everything to stop the Chimera project, and Zara had jeopardized everything. I'm sorry, Zara, Anya said, her voice hardening, but you made your choice. A final, explosive battle erupted between Anya and Zara, a personal showdown between two former allies. They fought with a ferocity born of betrayal and desperation, their skills and training pushed to their limits. Decker, meanwhile, engaged the director in a brutal hand-to-hand combat. He was a formidable opponent, but Decker was determined to stop him, to prevent him from unleashing the Chimera weapon. As the battle reached its climax, Anya managed to disarm Zara, her weapon clattering to the floor. She stood over Zara, her face filled with rage and sorrow. I can't do it, Anya, Zara sobbed. Please don't kill me. Anya hesitated, her hand trembling. She had never taken a life in cold blood, but she knew that she had to stop Zara, to prevent her from betraying anyone else. With a heavy heart, Anya made her decision. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and she couldn't afford to show mercy. The final battle had reached its end, and the consequences would be devastating. In the aftermath of the battle, the villa was a scene of devastation. The director lay defeated, the Chimera project thwarted. Decker had managed to secure the weapon, preventing it from falling into the wrong hands. The immediate threat was over, but the war was far from won. Anya, standing over Zara's body, felt a wave of grief and remorse wash over her. She had taken a life she had once valued. The violence had taken its toll, leaving her scarred and weary. Decker approached her, his face etched with concern. Are you all right? He asked, his voice soft. Anya shook her head. I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know who I am anymore. Decker took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. You're a survivor, Anya, he said. You're a fighter. You're stronger than you think. With the director defeated and the Chimera weapon secured, Anya and Decker turned their attention to dismantling the syndicate. They used the information they had gathered to expose the organization's corruption, revealing their crimes to the world. Isabel, using her hacking skills, released the syndicate's financial records, exposing their illegal activities and their ties to powerful politicians and corporations. Mikhail, with his knowledge of black market arms, helped them track down and dismantle the syndicate's supply lines, cutting off their access to weapons and resources. The syndicate crumbled, its power base eroded, its reputation tarnished. Its members were arrested, prosecuted, and brought to justice. Anya had achieved her revenge, dismantling the organization that had betrayed her and used her. But the victory came at a cost. Anya and Decker were forever changed by their experience. They had seen the worst of humanity. They had witnessed the depths of depravity. They had lost friends, they had taken lives. As the dust settled, Anya and Decker found themselves at a crossroads. They had accomplished their mission, but they were left with a void in their lives. They had no home, no family, no purpose. "What do we do now?" Anya asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Decker looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "We start over," he said. "We build a new life together." He proposed a future, a life beyond the violence and betrayal, a life where they could find peace and happiness, a life where they could build a family, a life where they could finally be free. Anya hesitated, her heart filled with hope and fear. She had never allowed herself to dream of such a future. But now, she realized that it was possible. She could leave the past behind. She could embrace the present. She could build a new life with Decker. With a deep breath, Anya made her decision. She took Decker's hand, her eyes filled with love and trust. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "Let's start over." The resolution had arrived, a bittersweet ending that hinted at a possible future. A new beginning for two souls forever bound by shared trauma and a hard-won victory. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange, purple, and gold. Anya and Decker stood on a remote hillside overlooking the vast expanse of the Carpathian Mountains. The same mountains that had once offered Decker solace and now offered them both a new beginning. They had sold Decker's cabin, using the money to buy a small farm in Argentina, a place far removed from the violence and betrayal of their past. They planned to raise horses, to grow their own food, to live a simple life, free from the shadows of the syndicate. Anya gazed at the setting sun, her face serene, her eyes filled with hope. The scars of her past would always be with her, but she was no longer defined by them. She had found peace. She had found love. She had found a purpose. Decker placed his arm around her, his touch gentle and reassuring. He had found his own redemption, his own peace. He had helped Anya find her way, and in doing so, he had found his own salvation. They stood in silence for a moment, savoring the beauty of the moment, the promise of the future. Then, they turned and walked towards their waiting horses, two magnificent creatures that symbolized their newfound freedom. As they mounted their horses, they exchanged a knowing glance, a silent promise to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they rode off into the sunset, their silhouettes framed against the fiery sky, leaving behind the darkness of their past and embracing the light of their future. The camera lingered on the empty hillside, the wind whispering through the tall grass, carrying with it the echoes of their past. The scene faded to black, leaving the audience with a sense of closure, a sense of hope, and a sense of the possibility of further adventures. Perhaps one day Anya and Decker would be called upon to use their skills again, to fight for justice, to protect the innocent. But for now, they had earned their peace, they had earned their happiness. They were free to live their lives, to love each other, to build a future together. The final shot, the vast, open landscape of Argentina, a symbol of their newfound freedom and the promise of a new beginning. The sun setting over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land. A beacon of hope for two souls who had finally found their way home. The end. Or perhaps just the beginning.